Today I am going to be reviewing Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Please be aware that I shall be discussing mental illness, specifically psychosis. Bear this in mind going forward if you find this topic upsetting or difficult to listen to at all. It is generally believed that mental health is not shown very well in video games, whether it being the depictions themselves or how the mental health affects the people involved. In August 2017, Ninja Theory released Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice for the PlayStation 4 and PC, with Xbox One and Switch versions following in the years after. Hellblade is a dark fantasy action game which depicts psychosis and mental health in ways never done before, and the team at Ninja Theory's main aim was to tread upon dangerous ground and try and give a true and fair representation of how psychosis can affect someone. Now, I will not pretend to understand or know anything about psychosis, so please do forgive me if I get some things wrong. I have done some research into this before writing this review, but I repeat, I am no expert, and it's not an easy thing to get your head around and fully understand. Psychosis is a mental health issue in which there are two main symptoms. The first being hallucinations. These can be in any sense, so visually, auditory, or even smell and feel. These hallucinations are by definition not objectively real, but to the person having them, they are real as you or me and can be from anything to different colours, to walls moving, all the way to some people seeing hanging bodies when they enter rooms. The second main symptom is delusion. This is where the person has strong beliefs that are not shared by other people. As an example, a delusion of grandeur, or that people want to harm them in some way. Ninja Theory wanted to show these symptoms in as true a way as they could. And so when making this game, had professionals in psychosis, as well as people who suffer from psychosis, help when making the game, giving them their own personal experiences with it, and then giving feedback on how the developers have portrayed it within the game itself. Going forward, I will be talking major spoilers about this game, as I feel it is difficult for me to give my true feelings on it without discussing the spoiler-heavy moments. So here we go. Let's review Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. The story follows Senua, a picked warrior. The game is set in the late 8th century, in which mental health wasn't really known. Senua suffers from psychosis, but due to the times her father, a druid known as Zinbel, convinced her she suffered a curse. Senua is making her way to Helheim, the Norse underworld, to face off against Hela and save her lover Delusion, who was sacrificed by the Norsemen in a raid using the Blood Eagle ritual. As she goes towards Helheim, she has visions from a man named Druth. He was a slave to the Norsemen and well versed within their legends. He is the man who taught Senua about the gods and their stories, and therefore gives her guidance as she tries to make her way to Hela. As she travels, she hears voices left, right, and centre, some berating her, some warning her, and some just plain old frightened of what is happening. These are known as the Furies within the game. There is one voice though that cuts through all of them: the darkness. This voice is the dark entity at the centre of her curse, and belittles her at every turn. She solves puzzles, fights brutish Norsemen and monsters, and eventually makes her way to Helheim to take on Hela. So, my thoughts on the story so far is that it's good. It's a simple tale of a woman who is cursed, and is trying to save her lover from the clutches of hell. But that's what you see looking on the surface. And from here is where we will head into spoiler territory. Hela kicks her from Helheim, at which point she must take on some trials to obtain a sword that can kill even the gods. These trials test her in many ways. Some drop her in the darkness and make her feel her way to safety. Others have her running for her life, not stopping at all. Throughout all of them though, the voices still persist. As she makes her way through the story, you get flashbacks of Senua's past. You see the conversations between her and her father. You see how her and Delusion first met. You even see memories that were not objectively real, and that were part of her psychosis. This is a fantastic storytelling device, and it further cements the notion that Senua is suffering from mental health issues, that even the flashbacks are not the complete truth, that some of them are just how she perceived things and not necessarily how things happened. Due to the fact you're seeing everything through Senua's eyes, this makes you confused, and makes you wary as the player as to what is real and what isn't going forward. You see how the delusions can affect how she feels and sees things. Eventually, you learn that the darkness is a representation of Senua's father and his abuse. You learn that Senua's mother also suffered from the illness, but was burned by Senua's father in front of her, causing her psychosis to worsen. In the final part of the game, Senua fights legions of Hela's army. One after another they come. Every time you defeat one, another appears. And it just goes on and on and on. It's draining. You can see Senua slowing until eventually she dies. The final scene is of Hela holding Dillion's head next to Senua's body. It then changes, and it is in fact Senua holding Dillion's head next to Hela's body. She comes to the realization that she cannot bring Dillion back. This delusion that he can be saved is pushed aside. The voices of the Furies are pushed back as Senua and the player realizes that this entire battle, this entire quest, was all in her head. It was all a delusion. They were all hallucinations in some way or another. When I got to this point, I was almost disappointed in a way. I initially felt like they had gone for the "but it was all a dream" ending, which is usually a cop-out. But then I realised something. This story was not about the quest, and was not about saving Dillion from the clutches of hell. The story Ninja Theory were trying to tell was that of a woman's struggle with psychosis, and how it affected her in her life, and how she deals with it moving forward. Mental illness has not been done in a video game like this before, and the detail and storytelling around all of it that developers have done is absolutely brilliant, and I cannot fault them on it at all. The gameplay can be broken down into two separate parts. You have the puzzles and the combat. Let's start with the puzzles. A lot of the puzzles are related to psychosis in some way, which I shall try and explain as I go. The first and main puzzle you will come across is when trying to unlock doors. You need to find things in the surrounding area that imitate the shapes of the runes found on said doors. These vary from fairly easy to a pain in my goddamn ass. This is based on the fact that some people who have issues with psychosis find themselves trying to find symbols and shapes within the real world, and cannot escape the need to find these shapes. As a puzzle, it started off decent. My biggest problem was that it was the main puzzle throughout the game and would need to be done over and over again. Yes, I understand the importance of it, but as someone who is playing a game, it unfortunately can be a bit stale. But maybe that's the point, I don't know. Maybe the devs did it so much to drill into the player how repetitive and frustrating it can be for someone to have to do this in their day-to-day lives. There are a couple of other puzzles that appear as well, but on a much smaller scale. You have ones in which you must fix the area around you so that you can climb stairs or cross bridges. There is a labyrinth at one point, which was interesting as you could very easily find yourself going round and round in circles. There was a maze as well, but instead of just trying to traverse the maze, you had to run through it, avoiding a barely seen enemy and trying to find more of these rooms. This was tough at first, but once I got the hang of it, it was fine, and actually a nice change of pace to the shape-finding puzzle. You also had one in which you find yourself in darkness, and must feel the wind around you and listen to the water beneath your feet to traverse your way to safety. There's also a point in which you must literally run from light source to light source, as being in the darkness makes the world distort, causes great tension as something starts chasing you. These puzzles represent the fear of being lost, being chased by something unknown, and the fear of the encroaching darkness that some people get when dealing with psychosis. They bring tension and fear to the forefront of the player's mind and really makes them question what the hell is going on. Overall, puzzle-wise it's not too bad. I feel as a game it focuses too much on the finding of shapes in the world around you, which is a shame, as if it would have done more of the fast-paced mazes and traversing darkness to spread it out more. That would have been a lot more enjoyable and a lot less monotonous from a gameplay perspective. Next, let's discuss combat. It's weighty is the first thing I would say, and was the first thing I noticed. You have a light attack, heavy attack, melee attack, and a block. These also have different combos and movements depending on if you're dodging an attack, running, or blocking, making the combat feel a lot more fluid when in the midst of it. There are several types of enemies, each with their own speciality and each varying in how difficult they are to beat. Also, with each one will depend on how you need to fight. So, someone with a shield will need you to melee them first to get that shield out of the way. These big old brutes need to be evaded and taken down with short, quick attacks. One thing that will be your best friend and should be mastered quickly is the perfect block. This will stun your enemy and allow you a follow-up attack. This can be used against most bosses as well and is vital to get through this game safely. I would say it's some decent combat. Until the end of the game, it's fairly slow and meticulous, making you react rather than act. Once you get yourself familiar and comfortable, then you start to act, and you feel pretty awesome when you get it right. At the end of the game, you fight Hela's army. You take them out one after another, and they just keep appearing. Now, depending on your skill level, will depend on how long you last here. You're actually supposed to lose. I did not realise this. I continued to fight for a good 12 minutes before eventually dying. In this fight, Senua gets more and more tired, as more and more enemies appear, and you actually feel that in a way. You're concentrating so much and focusing on everything around you and trying so hard not to die that you start to feel stressed out and you really refuse to go down. This part really made me think about things. The way I saw this was the enemies were the Psychosis, and no matter how much I fought, they just kept coming and coming until they eventually beat me down to accept my fate. Being able to accept things is the first step towards dealing with most problems in life, and that includes mental health. There is one further mechanic. It comes to light early in the game in which you fight a group of enemies and lose. You have to lose. There is no choice. At this point, this black stuff infects your arm, and you are told that every time you fail, the rot will make its way towards your head, and when it reaches it, Senua's quest is over. This was interesting as it adds a fear of permadeath. It was realised by the fanbase very quickly that it was in fact not true, and that there is no permadeath system. It was in fact something the devs included to add that further fear of failing. That little bit that links your feelings to that of Senua's. The fear of failing and losing all your progress. And that as the game progresses and Senua realises and begins to understand what is going on, you too realise and start to understand that you can't fail, as there is nothing to fail. The quest is all in her head, and it has been implanted there by the Psychosis and past trauma, in the same way that the permadeath was implanted in the player's head by the devs. It's a simple lie, one which not everyone agreed with, but I personally thought it worked well. Overall, I think the gameplay is good. I would like the puzzles to be a bit more diverse and maybe for there to be a bit more combat, as until the end it feels few and far between. It's done well though. Ninja Theory did their research and got the help needed to show the struggles that people facing psychosis go through on a daily basis. And yes, I can never know if that's definitely how it is, but I can empathise still to the point that living that kind of life must be goddamn difficult. The gameplay gives that impression, it really does. The graphics in this game are phenomenal. The motion capture is absolutely brilliant. The world looks gorgeous. The use of darkness and different colours really give off the impression that you know how Senua is feeling at that time. When things are dark and gritty, you get the impression Senua is feeling scared and alone. When it's bright and colourful, you can feel her happiness. When things are moving quickly and are, without a better way of describing it, broken, you feel the tension and confusion that Senua feels in that moment. It's difficult to say much more, to be honest. The game looks bloody brilliant, and the effects used to show how Senua is feeling in those moments really work. The music used makes me feel like I'm in the time of the Norsemen and the Pict. The focus on using vocals to make the main melodies and using mainly drums, percussion and horns to fill in the rest gives off the impression that this was in a time of war, where strength meant everything, and without it, you will fail. The sound effects, my word, the sound effects. This is where the game truly shines. This is what sets it apart. Throughout the game, Right from the word go, you hear voices constantly with everything you do. Ninja Theory got specialists in to help record them too, getting in special equipment and voice actors to make it sound like these voices were all around you, some close, some far, and yet all of them in your head, all talking to you from all different directions. No voice spoke through both ears. I only ever heard them in one ear. They belittle you. They fear what's coming, and at some points they actually try to help you. When in combat, if someone comes up behind you, one of the voices will warn you. Some will tell you to look in certain directions when trying to solve puzzles. This was done spectacularly, and this was also something that interested me most. Was this accurate? If so, how accurate? Of course, they got specialists and people who actually deal with psychosis to help. After doing some research and looking into it further, apparently it is. Even to the point that some people said, it's true that some try to help you, but the truth is, can you still trust them as they're part of your psychosis? That added a whole new level to it for me when I found this out. Because yes, in the sense of the game, yes, I can trust them. But it made me think about it even more and how it relates to people in the real world, and how scary it must actually be to deal with. This was a difficult one. I wanted to review this game, but at the same time, it's difficult to review this game without delving into psychosis and mental health, and I did not want to attempt to talk about something that is not easily understood without doing proper research. The research wasn't the difficult thing, there's plenty out there to find. It was understanding it and trying to put myself in the shoes of people who do battle with psychosis every day, and I can only hope I have done enough. This game is an interesting one. It has broken the barriers of mental health within the video game world and has really shown how it can affect some people. This game was praised for what it has done by so many people, but it's interesting because some people did not agree and said that not everyone's psychosis or mental illness is the same. To this I agree, they won't be the same. I think what Ninja Theory have tried to do here is just bring attention to the problem. I do not think they have tried to explain it or tried to say, this is how psychosis affects people. They have said, psychosis is a very real thing, and this is how it has affected Senua herself. This is just one example. To me, this is a stepping stone and to grab people's attention. It's something that has caught people's intrigue and made them look into psychosis more within our world. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because at the end of the day, it is still a game. So as a game, how is it? The story is very good. The gameplay, I would say, could be a bit better. The puzzles were my main issue, as they got too samey. This game took me about 6 hours to finish, so luckily, although the puzzles got boring by the end of it, it's not like I was dealing with them for 20 to 30 hours. The tension in this game though is palpable. You don't know what's real and what's not, and that not knowing pushes you through to uncover what is going on. I think as a game it succeeds, but Ninja Theory wanted to do more than just make a fantasy game. They wanted to bring a true and fair view to a serious issue, and I think they succeeded. I really do. Well, that is all the time I've got for today, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. There are many theories on this game and what parts are real and what parts aren't, but that's a discussion for another day. Did you play this game? What are your thoughts on it and its depiction of mental health? If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell and smash that like button. You want to know more about mental health and psychosis? I shall leave some links down in the description below, as it is a serious issue that after playing this game I realise I do not know enough about, or how it can affect people, and I imagine others don't either. Take it easy everybody.